Hey guys, check out this sweet package I got in the mail. Mr. Winging It Freehand's about to take his guitar routing to the next level. Got just about every guitar and bass pickup template and a tremolo template. I'm gonna be doing a full review and demo video of these coming up. But before I do that, I'm gonna be doing a video that I've been promising to do for a while. You guys have been asking me for a video on how to freehand route like a pro without router templates. Now, I've been building guitars for about 4 or 5 years now, and I honestly can say that I have never once in my life used a router template on my guitar builds. Now, they haven't all come out perfect, but I've learned a ton of tips and tricks along the way to get nearly perfect routes without templates. So if you want to see how I do that, stick around. I'm Dan, this is Guns and Guitars. Let's get started. Now, before we get started, I just want to state the fact right up front that your freehand routes are never going to be as good or as clean or as straight as routing with a template, okay? Just like drawing a straight line freehand, it will never be perfectly straight without the use of a straight edge guide. The same thing applies with routing. Without using a router template or jig or something to guide your router bit, you will never get perfectly straight lines. Now, ask any freehand artist, just because a line isn't perfectly straight doesn't mean it's not clean and it doesn't look good. So we can get really clean, good looking routes without templates. And I'm gonna show you my tips and tricks for that right now. All right, obviously the first thing you wanna do is plan out your build so you know where about everything is gonna go. And then you wanna line up your neck with the center line of your body. Now, obviously everybody has their own preferred way of doing this. Pretty much what I like to do is mark the center of my neck and line it up with the center line of my body. And then I will take a straight edge and run it along the heel of the neck, and then do again the same on the other side with a different straight edge, and just make sure the spacing remains equal with the center line all the way down. And then we know that our neck is centered on our body. Now we're going to trace where we are going to route, and it's especially important with the neck pocket that you use a mechanical pencil with the thinnest lead that you can get away with seeing. And the reason for that, we want our neck pocket to be as tight as possible. So we don't want the thickness of the lead creating a wider pocket than our neck. So use a mechanical pencil, that way you can get it nice and tight. So there we go. So now we have our neck pocket route, and I'm gonna go ahead and route and place the neck before I do any other routes, just in case something changes with the neck angle, it doesn't mess up my string alignment with the pickups and bridge. Probably the most common mistake I see when people are trying to freehand route is they will try to go the full depth on their first pass, and then they complain that the router got away from them, they gouge their project, and the whole thing's firewood. Firstly, you gotta quit that mindset. Part of freehand routing is learning how to fix your mistakes, and we'll talk about that a little bit as we go. But really, you can do yourself a huge favor by just making a much shallower pass on your first time. So essentially what we're doing is we're creating a template within our project. So I've set the depth on my plunge router to go down about I don't know, 1/4 of an inch, maybe smaller, maybe 3/16 of an inch. And having a plunge router for this job is definitely recommended. You can use a fixed base router if you want to. I did it for years, but the plunge router definitely helps. So we're just gonna do a nice shallow pass and see where that gets us. All right, bringing you in close here, you can see that I routed the majority of the material out, but I left a little slim line between where I routed and the actual pencil marker. Okay, that's my second tip is, in addition to going shallower, we're not gonna go all the way to the line on our very first pass. And the reason for this is the same reason why we're not doing the full depth, because what we want is for our router to glide as gently as possible so we can route the straightest, cleanest line as possible. And so we're just reducing friction. So we're not fighting the router as much. It's gonna be much easier for our router to glide along in a straight path because we're not trying to remove so much material. And this also affords for some mistake correction. If you were routing out this meat area and the router got away from you and you gouged one of your sides, maybe just barely past your line, okay, not all is lost, because you might be able to reposition your neck pocket to cover up that gouge, and then you can route again. Also, before we get started routing, you may have noticed in operating your router that you can go smoother in one direction than you can the other direction. And for me, that direction is that way when I'm routing on an edge like this. When I'm routing around an edge like this, it's this way. When I'm coming inside, it's this way. That looks nice and straight, so I'm gonna reposition and I'm gonna come over and I'm gonna do this other side right here. Now we double check our fit. As you can see, my fit does fit pretty good, but I do have a little tiny gap right there because I didn't quite go to the edge of the base of my route. So I'm just gonna pencil that out again. Now, that's just a very slim line to try to take out with a router. And so what I typically do at this point is I will actually just get out my files and my chisels and just try to clean it up a little bit just with some hand tools. Here I'm just using my chisel sort of as a scraper. I'm gonna pull away just a little bit of that material. All right, and this is probably about as good as I'm gonna get freehand routing it. So now we're gonna go ahead and plunge the full depth of our route and use the ball bearing on our plunge bit to run around this like it's a template, essentially. We just created a template. You guys can already see how much more I am fighting it because I'm going the full depth this time. And that's why you don't do that the first time. There we go. That is a nice, tight, flush-fitting neck pocket. What do you guys think? Now that my neck has been placed, I'm going to go ahead and draw my new center lines because it's possible that my center line has shifted, and it actually looks like it probably has. Gosh, that shifted quite a bit. This was the old center line, and this is the new center line for my center block. So you can see it shifted about 1/4 of an inch maybe, it seems like. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a new center line. This is why it's important you do the neck first, and the neck, like I said, needs to be much tighter tolerances than your pickups, even if you're doing direct mounted pickups, which is what I think I'm gonna be doing with this body, just because I really like all the character that's in this wood. You can see the cracks that I've stabilized with epoxy resin. I was gonna originally do a pick guard, but after seeing these cracks, I think that it's going to look much cooler just direct mounted pickups. Even with direct mounted pickups, you can still get really good clean results. They're a lot more forgiving actually than the neck pocket. So if you've gotten this far, you are good to go. But there's still a few more tips and tricks that I have for you. In fact, why don't we do it this way? Why don't I go ahead and freehand route the neck pickup, and then we'll use my new template for the bridge pickup, and then we can compare side by side so you can see how close you can get freehanding. Okay, once you've measured out where you're going to be putting your pickups, it's just a matter of tracing your pickups and pretty much repeating what we've already done. But the biggest tip that I'm going to give you is that if you have one, instead of tracing your pickups, trace a pickup ring. The pickup ring is much easier to see that you're centered where you're going to go. And it also gives you two lines, okay? Your inside line will be your go line, and then your outside line will be your no-go line. That means under no circumstance should you go beyond that line. And then you have an idea of where in between you need to land. And if you end up using a humbucker mounting ring or a single coil mounting ring or whatever, as opposed to doing a direct mounted pickup, then you actually have some room for error where you don't have to have perfectly straight lines. But we're gonna aim for perfectly straight so we can still do a direct mount. So by putting this over here, I can see visually that it is perfectly centered on my measurements. All right, so now I'm gonna take a straight edge and I'm just gonna split the difference between the inside and the outside. And that's gonna give us the line that we are trying to nail. And very lastly, I'm going to go ahead and trace in my actual pickup exactly where those dog ears need to be for the mounting hardware. All right, so I went ahead and darkened up my lines with Sharpie here. And basically the goal is going to be to remove all the Sharpie except for a super fine little tiny outline. And then that'll land us right smack in the middle of our pickup mounting ring. You can see it covers all the Sharpie entirely. Second verse, same as the first. We're gonna do a shallow pass, probably 1/4 of an inch, and then Again, we're gonna go up to the black line, but we're not actually gonna touch the black line on this first pass. All right, I'm gonna zoom in on something for you guys to see real quick. So you can see this is exactly why we don't go all the way to our line on the very first pass, okay? You can see here, I did a good job of going up to the black line all the way around until I got to this corner. It touched both sides at the same time and it jumped on me and it pushed in, and there is just a little teeny tiny sliver of a black line left, which is what we're going for in the final pass. But if I was trying to do a final pass the first time, I would have ruined it right there. That would have jumped out at least 1/8 of an inch beyond where I was trying to go. So because I was careful not to go all the way to my line this first time, we still have enough meat to work with to make a decent looking route. So I just need to be extra super careful, especially right here, that I don't let the router go beyond where I've already routed. Again, I'm just using a chisel more or less as a scraper, just cleaning up these lines a little bit, make them look a little straighter, a little smoother. A file or even just some sandpaper, you know, wrapped around a popsicle stick or a screwdriver. That'll get your line straight enough. All right, feeling good about that. I think I'm ready to go the full depth on this. All right, I went ahead and sanded off all the Sharpie so you can just see how clean this route really looks. And, you know, if I'm going to be perfectly honest, that's one of the cleaner ones that I've done freehand. And our humbucker fits in there nice and perfect. It probably came out cleaner because I was taking the time to teach you all of my tips and tricks. I wanted to make sure that I didn't screw up any of my own methods. So, but that looks great. I can't imagine that a template would look much cleaner than that. That was certainly the easier way to do it, that's for sure. Oh no! My router chunked out a little bit because there's a knot right there. Gosh darn it. See, even using router templates, you are not safe from making mistakes. All right. Man, it sure is a super bummer. I don't know if you can see on the camera or not, but this little corner chipped out right here. And it's hard to notice because of the knot that's there, but that's the knot is the reason why it chunked out. So that just goes to show you that even using template, you're not necessarily safe. Your router can still tear out and you're still gonna have to learn how to fix it. When I go deeper now, I'm gonna have to be careful and just freehand to that corner right there to make sure that my ball bearing doesn't follow that gouge right there. You can see obviously the little ears on the sides are much wider on the template than I made them. So in order for these two to match, I am gonna need to take that template and at least elongate those ears so that they don't look so weird. But if you compare the two, I mean, one doesn't necessarily look better than the other. Really, just they look different. But they both look clean, they both look straight, and that's all that matters, right? Okay, now you guys need to let me know in the comments if I nailed it or not. Freehand, template. Honestly, I personally like the look of my freehand humbucker route for a direct mount a little bit better. I like the smaller little ears on it, and I thought I was gonna have to redo it to match this one, but I probably won't need to. Honestly, it doesn't bother me that much. You know, at a glance, you don't really tell that they're different. This one obviously is not quite as tight of tolerances, so that pickup can move around a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about fixing your mistakes, because that's an important part of freehand routing, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this video. If you make a mistake, your project is not firewood. Mistakes are not mistakes, they're actually lessons. But they're not lessons unless you learn how to fix your mistake. If you were to gouge it out, you should have plenty of scrap material that you can just glue back in there, wood fill it, and then redraw your lines and try it again. And I think it's important that every craftsman goes through those steps at some point in their life. Another thing you can do is just continue removing material until you get to a spot that you like, okay? You know, this one is a much tighter tolerance, so if this line right here wasn't perfectly straight, it was crooked, or had some, you know, waviness to it, then you could always just draw another straight line right behind it, and then try to take it off nice and straight again. Or use some additional tools like a file or a chisel or something to straighten it out. And the cool thing is, if we're going just for a visual fix, you really only need to do it to the very top of the cavity. As long as your pickup fits down inside, assuming that you stain it black or a darker color of what you stained on top, then nobody's going to see way deep down in the cavity what it looks like. They're only going to see this top line. I hope this video was very helpful for you, and if you guys know of any other tips and tricks to do this better, please put them in the comments for future viewers to read. I know that'll be very helpful, and of course, I have more to learn as well, so if you've got tips that I didn't mention, I would like to read them and benefit from them as well. Now, the reason why I've been freehand routing for so long is because I'm cheap and I just don't want to pay for the templates, okay? But I got these awesome new templates from Music Lily. I showed them to you earlier, and they are the cheapest router templates you can get. So make sure you're subscribed if you want to see a full review and demo of these. And until next time, I'm Dan. This is Guns and Guitars, and I will see you in that next video.